that's it. That's all they have to do. But the biggest difference for me in this Ryder Cup is very simple. It comes down to two things so far.
Greg Norman just exploded on Scottie Scheffler, and it's tearing the golf world apart. His brutal attack after the Ryder Cup loss has fans questioning everything about Team USA's so-called leader. But there's more to this meltdown than what we saw on camera. And today, I'm revealing the truth behind Norman's shocking outburst.
Scottie Scheffler is the #1 player in the world. Now, we've had the official world golf ranking since 1986. Scottie Scheffler was the first player, #1 in the world in a Ryder Cup, to lose his first 3 matches when he lost Saturday morning. And then he doubled down.
Bethpage breakdown. The 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black was supposed to be payback. After getting cooked in Rome 2 years prior, Team USA strutted into New York with fireworks, flag-waving bravado, and a captain, Keegan Bradley, handpicked to inject raw American chaos into golf's most civilized rivalry. The home crowd? Unhinged. The players? Paid. Literally. For the first time, US golfers were taking $400,000 stipends for their time and effort, a move that had purists gagging into their Arnold Palmers. Front and center of the spectacle was Scottie Scheffler, the PGA Tour's chosen one. Fresh off a near-mythical season with wins at the Masters, Players, and everything in between, Scheffler entered Bethpage looking like destiny in Nike shoes. The analysts called him the anchor, the savior, the man who'd finally dragged the stars and stripes back to Ryder Cup relevance. Instead, he played like a man allergic to chemistry. Paired with Russell Henley in foursomes, Scheffler's precision went missing faster than a Livy contract clause. Drives sprayed, irons ballooned, putts whispered past the cup. Europe, led by a frosty surgical Ludwig Oberg, made it look effortless. When the morning dust settled, the scoreboard read 5-3 to Europe, and social media was already typing "uh-oh." Greg Norman, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet before the cup, emerged with crocodile tears and crocodile teeth. "When you're the best in the world," he told a post-match panel, "you don't crumble under noise, you use it." Translation: Scheffler choked. And from there, the spiral began. The irony? Norman once praised Scheffler's mental fortitude during Liv's rise, calling him unflappable. But as the pressure of home soil and $400K stipends mounted, unflappable turned into unrecognizable. The Ryder Cup wasn't Scheffler's tournament, it was his undoing. By the end of day 1, Team USA's swagger had curdled into panic. Bradley's wildcard picks looked like lottery tickets that didn't hit, and Europe's captain Luke Donald, calm as a surgeon in scrubs, just kept slicing America's ego to pieces. It wasn't just a loss, it was an omen. Crumbling confidence day 1's scoreboard was bad, but the vibes were worse. Scheffler, now 0-1-1, looked like a man haunted by his own highlight reel. Every time the cameras caught him mid-swing, you could almost see the ghost of Rome 2023 whispering, "Not again." The morning foursomes had been a wash, but the afternoon fourballs were a funeral. Scheffler, paired with Brooks Koepka, was supposed to bring firepower. Instead, he brought confusion. Koepka's bombs landed. Scheffler's irons missed greens by inches that felt like miles. Europe's young guns, Oberg and Hovland, toyed with them, draining birdies with the emotional detachment of men folding laundry. The match ended 2-1, and Scheffler's Ryder Cup record dipped to 0-6 in his last 6 matches. The post-round pressers were a masterclass in damage control. Keegan Bradley tried to keep it positive. "Scottie's our guy. He's the best in the world for a reason." But even that reassurance sounded like denial dressed in a red, white, and blue polo. The fans at Bethpage, notoriously unforgiving, started to turn. Boos slipped between cheers. A chant of "Scottie, Scottie" became less encouragement, more interrogation. Then came Greg Norman. Oh, Greg. The man who's turned shade-throwing into an Olympic sport. On a Golf Channel panel, he dropped the verbal equivalent of a bunker grenade. The US has all the talent, but none of the cohesion. And Scottie, well, being the best on paper doesn't mean much when the paper's on fire. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't diplomatic, it was vintage shark, circling blood in the water, and it landed like a gut punch. Scheffler, who spent his career trying to stay above the noise, suddenly found himself drowning in it. Every missed putt wasn't just a point lost, it was ammunition for Norman's smirk. Meanwhile, Twitter, or rather X, exploded. Memes of Scheffler missing two-footers, quotes from Norman spliced with slow-mo replays, and captions like, "World number one, not this weekend." The golf internet had spoken, and it was ruthless. By the time Saturday dawned, the narrative was clear. Team USA wasn't losing to Europe. They were losing to themselves. And Scottie Scheffler, whether fair or not, had become the face of the implosion. Saturday spiral.
Scottie Scheffler simply didn't show up. And yes, the Euros made all these kinds of amazing putts and chip-ins to do all these wonderful things. But if you're the best player in the world, you better goddamn play like it if the United States wants to win. And Scottie Scheffler simply did not. In the morning session on 18, he shanked a wedge on 18. Shanked a wedge into a bunker or into the fescue around a bunker that essentially lost the match. He stubbed a putt down the stretch on Saturday afternoon.
Saturday morning arrived not with hope, but with hangover energy, the kind that comes after a national embarrassment and 3 cups of coffee can't fix. Team USA needed redemption. Instead, they got relapse. The scoreline read, Europe 9, USA 5. And leading the parade of disappointment, Scottie Scheffler, the world's #1 golfer who suddenly couldn't buy a win, a putt, or a clue. His pairing with Russell Henley for the morning 4-balls was supposed to bring calm consistency. It brought chaos. Jon Rahm and Tyrrell Hatton chewed through the Americans like they were breakfast sandwiches. Scheffler's swing, once poetry in motion, now looked like slam poetry performed at a corporate retreat. Technically impressive, emotionally disjointed. He sprayed his drives into Bethpage's thick, rough, rolled putts tentatively, and by the 9th hole, the gallery had gone from rowdy to restless. On the 13th, when another birdie chance slid past the lip, a fan yelled, "Let Norman coach you, Scottie." It was a joke, maybe, but the crowd roared. That's when Greg Norman's shadow became more than commentary. It was presence. Norman, miles away, watching the carnage on a live feed, posted a cryptic Instagram story. Pressure reveals the real. Golf Twitter translated it immediately. Shark smells blood. By lunchtime, the screenshot had racked up 50,000 shares. Scheffler and Henley lost 3-2. His Ryder Cup record dropped to 0-3-1. Even the NBC commentators, normally gentle with the sport's golden boys, couldn't help themselves. For someone who dominates week to week, Brandel Chambly sighed. He looks completely lost in this format. Captain Keegan Bradley benched Scheffler for the afternoon. The official line was, rest. The truth? He needed a reset, maybe even an exorcism. The cameras caught him on the range, hitting silent, angry wedges while the rest of the team trudged out to lose again. By sundown, Europe's lead ballooned to 11-5. It wasn't just defeat, it was humiliation. And in that humiliation, Greg Norman found his platform. On a podcast that night, he unloaded, "This is what happens when golf becomes business, not battle. LIV built warriors, the PGA built accountants." It was a dig at the entire system, and at Scottie, specifically. Because to Norman, Scheffler was the face of that polite, neutered golf establishment. And watching him crumble was, in Norman's eyes, proof that the revolution had already won.
Bad luck, isn't it?
Let's have another look at that.
Tommy's into a foot. That's so unlucky.
Yeah, sort of hit the hole and the flag at the same time.
Crowd chaos Bethpage Black was supposed to be a cathedral of patriotism. Instead, it became a coliseum of carnage. New York's golf fans, loud, loyal, and just a little unhinged, turned the Ryder Cup into an emotional roller coaster that even Greg Norman couldn't script better. By Saturday afternoon, the jeers had become a soundtrack. Rory McIlroy was heckled for breathing, Jon Rahm was booed for smiling, and Scottie Scheffler? He became the lightning rod. Every missed putt drew groans, every shanked iron got sarcastic applause. By the time he stepped onto the 17th tee during warm-ups, the crowd was half mocking, half mourning. Scheffler, usually stoic, cracked. His post-round quote said it all. "That was one of the lowest moments of my career." The emotion in his voice made headlines. the world's best golfer brought to tears not by Europe, but by America. Keegan Bradley tried to defend the chaos. "That's New York passion," he said. But passion doesn't explain fans booing their own player, or hecklers shouting, "Go back to stroke play," during Scheffler's practice swings. It was toxic theater, and it fed into Norman's favorite narrative, that the PGA's crown jewel couldn't handle pressure when it wasn't politely clapping. Europe thrived in the madness. McIlroy and Hatton played like rock stars in a hostile bar gig, feeding off the booze like oxygen. Greg Norman, in a post-event interview, twisted the knife. "Those crowds used to intimidate Europe," he said. "Now they just embarrass the US." The optics were brutal. The so-called American fortress had turned against its own hero. Norman's smirk practically wrote itself. "This is why LIV was necessary," he declared in a later clip. "Golf needed grit. It needed edge. Scheffler has none." And that's the cruel irony. The man whose swing defines precision had his psyche publicly dismantled, one jeer, one missed putt at a time. The louder the chants, the quieter he got. The Ryder Cup became less about Europe versus America and more about Scottie versus himself. By the time Sunday arrived, Bethpage was running on fumes and caffeine. Team USA needed a miracle, and Scheffler needed redemption. Because if he didn't win his singles match, Greg Norman's rant would become gospel. Sunday salvation.
Scottie Scheffler, the #1 player in the world, the most dominant player in golf over the last 3 years, has not won a single point or even halved a match. He is 0-4. That has never happened in the history of the Ryder Cup in the official World Golf Rankings era going back to 1986.
Sunday morning broke with the energy of a final stand. Desperate, defiant, delusional. Team USA was down 15-9. They needed 9.5 points. And leading the charge? Scottie Scheffler, the man everyone had already buried. His opponent? Rory McIlroy, Europe's emotional heartbeat. It was the heavyweight fight golf didn't deserve, but desperately needed. Scheffler stepped to the tee looking composed but cold, eyes sunken with the kind of exhaustion only public humiliation brings. And then, against every headline and every meme, he started fighting back. Birdie on 4, another on 7. Suddenly, the crowd, that same mob that had mocked him 24 hours earlier, began to believe again. The chants returned, this time laced with hope instead of hate. "Let's go, Scottie," became a prayer. By the back 9, it was a war. McIlroy drained a 25-footer on 15. Scheffler answered on 16. Every hole felt like a heartbeat, every shot a referendum on whether redemption was possible. On the 18th, with the crowd roaring, Scheffler rolled in a nervy par putt to win one up. It wasn't dominance, it was deliverance. He didn't celebrate, he exhaled. For the first time all weekend, Scottie looked human again, like the man who'd been hiding under the weight of the world's expectations. His teammates swarmed him. The US bench erupted. Even the fans who'd booed him were now chanting his name like it had been theirs all along. Team USA mounted an incredible surge. Cantlay, Morikawa, Schauffele, all delivering clutch wins. For a moment, it felt like Medina 2012 in reverse. But golf, as always, is cruel. Europe hung on. When Jon Rahm halved his match, the cup was theirs, 15-13. Greg Norman didn't post that night. No victory lap, no quote. Just silence, which, from him, said everything. Maybe even he knew that mocking Scheffler after that fight back would have crossed the line from critic to cartoon. Scottie ended 1-3-1, statistically awful, emotionally redemptive. His par on 18 didn't win the cup, but it won something rarer: dignity. After 2 days of ridicule, he'd finally proven he could bleed and still battle. But golf's cruelest twist? Even redemption wasn't enough to silence the storm. Because once the final putt dropped, the finger-pointing began. And Norman, never one to waste a controversy, was ready to fire again. Finger-pointing.
This is not the Scottie Scheffler we've seen dominating the world. Meanwhile, you look at the Europeans. Tommy Fleetwood, who, by the way, has the best record in the history of the Ryder Cup winning percentage-wise.
The Ryder Cup was over. The champagne was spraying, just not the American kind. Europe was dancing on the greens at Bethpage, and Team USA was left blinking into the floodlights, drenched in disappointment and, in Scottie Scheffler's case, self-doubt. But before the flag could even be folded, the blame game began. "Scheffler cost us the cup." That was the quote echoing across sports talk shows Monday morning. It wasn't fair, but it was viral. The world's number one, reduced to a scapegoat, because in golf, narrative always swings harder than the club. Greg Norman wasted 0 seconds capitalizing. The shark doesn't just swim in chaos, he feeds on it. Appearing on a late-night sports segment, Norman smirked through his soundbite. "When your supposed leader goes 1-3-1, that's not bad luck, that's bad leadership. You can't win team golf with solo mindsets." Translation? Scheffler, meet the bus. Norman's already driving. Captain Keegan Bradley tried to take the heat. "The pairings are on me," he said, owning the optics of a benching that looked suspiciously like a punishment. But even that gesture fell flat. Commentators pounced on Scheffler's performance, his quiet demeanor, even his lack of visible fire. "He looks like he's playing a casual Thursday round," one analyst jabbed. Behind the scenes, murmurs spread about locker room tension, that Scheffler's intensity and Bradley's brashness clashed. Others whispered about the money controversy, the $400K stipends that supposedly fractured morale. Norman's earlier prophecy about golf becoming business, not battle, was suddenly sounding less bitter and more biblical. Even PGA loyalists couldn't fully defend Scheffler. Brandel Chambly called him mechanically brilliant but emotionally flat. Social media dubbed him the accountant. Greg Norman reposted that meme on his Instagram story with a shark emoji. Subtlety has never been his brand. What made it sting more was that Scheffler didn't fight back. No quotes, no rebuttals, just silence. Maybe it was maturity. Maybe it was damage control. But in the echo chamber of post-Ryder Cup discourse, silence sounds like surrender. For Norman, it was vindication. For Scheffler, it was a bruise that wouldn't fade. And for Team USA, it was another chapter in a decades-long comedy of errors. Big names, big hype, and the same familiar collapse. The moral, according to Greg Norman? You can't buy chemistry, and you can't fake killer instinct. Expert eruptions. If golf had a talk show version of a food fight, the Monday after Bethpage was it. Every analyst, pundit, and retired player with a microphone had a take, and most of them pointed at Scottie Scheffler like he was the only man holding a golf club all weekend. Shane Ryan of Golf Digest called Keegan Bradley's captaincy a case study in chaos, but saved his sharpest jab for Scheffler. The best player in the world forgot how to lead. Ouch. Meanwhile, Rick Golfs, never one for tact, tweeted a report card. Scheffler, D. DeChambeau, C+, USA strategy, F. Within an hour, it had 1 million impressions and a Norman retweet. Norman, still basking in the glow of being right for once, went on Piers Morgan Uncensored to double down. "I don't take joy in seeing the US fall, but this was inevitable. LIV taught its players how to fight. The PGA teaches its players how to comply." It was pure theater, smug, self-satisfied, and soaked in the satisfaction of having the last word. But the backlash was swift. Golf traditionalists accused Norman of exploiting the loss to promote LIV's failed rebellion. One fiery column in Golf Monthly titled, "Norman's victory lap is as tasteless as his shark logo," went viral for its sheer audacity. Still, the damage was done. The story had become binary. Greg Norman, the provocateur, versus Scottie Scheffler, the fallen hero. Experts began floating desperate solutions. "Bring Tiger in for 2027, one panelist shouted. "He'll bring order." Another countered, "We don't need a captain, we need therapy." It was chaos disguised as analysis. Even Rory McIlroy, normally diplomatic, couldn't resist a subtle dig. "They've got incredible talent, but they don't play like a team. We just enjoy this more." Translation: Europe drinks champagne, USA drinks excuses. Meanwhile, Scheffler remained a ghost. No tweets, no interviews, no apologies. Just the image of him walking off the 18th green, quiet, stoic, uncelebrated, looping endlessly on highlight reels. By Wednesday, Golf Channel aired a segment titled, "What's Next for Scottie?" The host asked the question everyone was thinking: can he bounce back, or has Greg Norman's curse finally landed? The word curse might have been tongue-in-cheek, but in golf, perception is reality. Norman couldn't resist one final swing. "If he learns to play for pride, not paycheck," he said, "maybe he'll find himself again." The crowd laughed. But somewhere in Texas, Scottie Scheffler was already grinding, quietly, like a man who'd heard enough. Lasting lessons. When the chaos fades and the memes die down, what's left is the echo, and that's where the 2025 Ryder Cup will live. A clash of talent, ego, and noise that left Scottie Scheffler's reputation dented and Greg Norman's ego inflated to the size of a LIV trophy. Scheffler's final record, 1-3-1, reads like a scar. His win over Rory McIlroy salvaged pride but didn't erase pain. It proved he's human, fallible, and maybe a little too polished for a sport that thrives on grit. The Ryder Cup doesn't reward perfection, it rewards chaos, and for once, the man who mastered calm couldn't summon the storm. Greg Norman, meanwhile, walked away vindicated in his own mind. His pre-event prophecies about passion, chemistry, and American complacency aged like expensive wine, or maybe just vinegar in a decanter. Either way, he got what he wanted, proof that his critiques of the PGA Tour culture had teeth. But beneath Norman's mockery lies an inconvenient truth. He wasn't entirely wrong. Team USA is built on stars, not synergy. It does play for optics as much as outcome. And Scottie Scheffler, the quiet assassin of stroke play, looked lost when stripped of his routine and thrust into the chaos of team golf. The lesson, then, isn't that Scheffler failed. It's that the system failed him. A program obsessed with analytics, sponsorships, and social optics forgot what made the Ryder Cup sacred: emotion. Europe had it, America didn't. Norman just said the quiet part loud. In the aftermath, calls for reform echoed louder than any cheer that week. Tiger Woods for captain in 2027. A revamp of pairing strategy. An overhaul of the task force. But reform can't fix culture. Only accountability can. And Scheffler, whether he likes it or not, has become the symbol of that reckoning. A year from now, the memes will fade, the hot takes will cool, and Norman will find someone new to torment. But the scar of Bethpage will linger. Not because of the loss, but because of what it revealed. That greatness without grit is just marketing. Scheffler may never say it out loud, but this Ryder Cup will define him. And maybe that's exactly what he needs. Not another trophy, but a test of character. Because golf doesn't remember who smiled on Sunday. It remembers who survived the storm. Greg Norman's rant may fade into the noise, but the echo of Bethpage still rings. The shark got his soundbite, the critics got their headlines, and Scottie Scheffler got his scar. But scars tell stories, and his isn't finished. Because every downfall in golf comes with one guarantee: someone's always watching the next swing. Like and subscribe for the next meltdown.